Hello, welcome back to the Wolf's Corner. I am your host, and today we are returning to Badab. Last we left, the Astral Claws had just lost their chapter master and suffered several other disasters over the preceding decades, leaving them in a very sad state. Now we're going to continue our story with the appointment of the new Astral Claws chapter master. In 715 M41, the remaining leaders of the chapter elected 3rd Company Captain Luf Huron as their new chapter master. This was a great honor for Huron, as he was the youngest warrior to reach the rank in the chapter's history. He quickly reorganized the chapter, its strategic deployments, and expanded its heavily depleted fleet by raiding Corsair hideouts where they stole vessels back from the pirates. The new leader also began a policy of blasting enemy worlds to lifeless husks. So to do this, he increased his chapter's stockpile of Exterminatus-grade weapons, and each time a fringe world harbored renegade ships even for a moment, the Astral Claws showed up and went, "Oh yeah? Those ships you let stay here? Yeah, they were traitors, so now you're gonna die." And then boom! No more world. This was a brutal policy, but considering how the Maelstrom Zone was, it was a necessary evil. At least for a while. But the real change began in 718 M41, 3 years after Huron became chapter master. In that year, Badab Primaris suffered the trouble of a civil war caused by a failed coup. The Astral Claws came down to the planet and crushed the conflict without any mercy. Once the civil war was over, the leaders who had enacted the coup were brought before Huron. As he had an example of what happened when a world was allowed to fall to its internal corruption, Huron declared that Badab would not suffer the same fate as Synax. Sending the Astral Claws back down to the planet, Chapter Master Huron ordered them to purge the majority of the ruling class and anyone they believed to be morally corrupt. With this elimination of the leaders of the world, Huron claimed the position of planetary ruler, calling himself the Tyrant of Badab. You'd think with such a name someone might have raised a red flag of warning about this fellow, but apparently not. Along with Badab Primaris, Huron declared all habitable worlds around the Badab system as his chapter's fiefdom, kind of like the realm of Ultramar, which I suspect was what Huron was going for. Now, he was fully within his right as leader of the Maelstrom Warders to do this. The new fiefdom's worlds were quickly purged of most of their ruling elites, and Astral Claw watch bastions were established on them. Huron's loyal servants and political allies were given positions of power within this pocket empire. To further cement his power and strengthen the defenses of the region, Huron combined the various planetary defense forces into a single, united force known as the Tyrant's Legion. This force would not only protect the various worlds in the Astral Claw's new realm, but would bolster the strength of their new masters in combat against their enemies. And to make sure this force was actually worth its name, Huron deployed detachments of his chapter to the Legion to train it to a better standard than most PDF, ridding it of perceived weakness. This soon showed dividends as the Tyrant's Legion began to repel various Corsair raids against the worlds of the Badab system, freeing the Astral Claws from garrison duty. Able to finally strike back, the Astral Claws launched several raids into outlying regions of the Maelstrom to hunt down and destroy heretic or Xenos-controlled facilities or bases. These victories not only helped to stabilize the region around Badab, it also enhanced the fame of the Badab system's new tyrant beyond the borders of the Maelstrom Zone. And this increasing reputation of success and capability to improve imperial control in the region, Huron saw a chance to achieve the ultimate goal of the Maelstrom Warders. Working hard and carefully, Huron sent some of his loyal servants to Terra with a formal, lengthy, and detailed petition for the High Lords. In it, Huron laid out his arguments for completely subduing the entire Maelstrom and its surrounding area, which his petition pointed out would greatly benefit the Imperium over the long term. But in order to achieve this ambitious plan, Huron's petition asked for the deployment of several more entire Space Marine chapters to the Warders. He even suggested that a new founding might be needed to fill the requirements of this plan. Now, Huron's plans were theoretically sound, and he did take a considerable amount of time to actually organize his arguments and the evidence to support them. He was this galaxy's version of an MA or PhD student, presenting their final paper to a professor board, just with the High Lords of Terra as the board. And like a lot of such students, Huron's petition was dismissed without a full hearing, on the grounds that the Imperium's needs were better met elsewhere. I can bet the reaction Huron had when he found that out. So the Astral Claws, disheartened about the dismissal of their plan, went back to protecting the Maelstrom and trying to expand Imperial influence in the area. But something dark was growing in the Badab system at this time. While the Warders were struggling to maintain Imperial grip in the region around the Maelstrom, the Astral Claw's tithe of gene seed to the Adeptus Mechanicus suddenly became infrequent and oftentimes incomplete. While this was a concerning development, as any slip in the logistic train around the Imperium could be the sign of something far darker developing, most adepts of the Mechanicus brushed it aside. Delays in gene seed tithes were often an issue for chapters in border regions or on crusades. After all, such forces were far more likely to suffer higher casualties than others, so they would need the gene seed to replace the loss of these brothers. However, the Astral Claw's delays became more extensive, and this was something the Mechanicus could not ignore. For now they had no idea what was going on, but the Astral Claws were conducting experiments to gain the forces that they were denied. Huron was hedging his bets. If the High Lords refused to provide the Warders with the reinforcements they needed to subjugate the Maelstrom, then they would make them themselves. Thus, by the time the whole situation blew up, the Astral Claws had managed to raise their force to 3,500 Space Marines. So that means the Astral Claws alone were at the strength of 3.5 other chapters. This was likely the very first of several actions that would see the Astral Claws fall from the Emperor's light. 11 years after the first attempt to petition the High Lords, Huron sent yet another detailed case to Terra. This time, the petition showed how Huron planned to completely purge the Maelstrom of all enemies of the Imperium and subdue the surrounding region. But to do this, Huron pleaded with the High Lords for a massive increase in Space Marine chapters to the Warders. Sadly, once again the High Lords dismissed the petition without a full hearing, as apparently the Imperium's needs were better met elsewhere. If it wasn't for what was about to happen, you have to feel some degree of sympathy for the Warders. They're trying to do their duties, and yet they keep getting screwed over by Terra. How nice. So, after being denied the reinforcements they have needed, and to add massive insult to these injuries, the Administratum increased the tithes demanded from the Maelstrom Zone. Yeah, really bad timing, Sloths. Huron, however, was not about to take this lying down. So in protest to all the garbage that had been dumped on his and the Warders' heads, he declared that Badab Primaris and the wider region's planetary ties were null and void. He also blocked Imperial trade through these realms in anger at the Administratum and the wider High Lord's refusal to give the Warders the resources necessary to effectively subdue the Maelstrom. Instead, he put these resources towards reinforcing the Badab sector and the Warders' fleet. The space defenses that were built around the outer and inner spheres of the Badab sector would eventually be called the Ring of Steel, and was claimed to be completely impenetrable. You know, the amount of times I've heard something called impenetrable and then gets penetrated is such a common thing that I wonder whether or not people make that claim simply to win a bet they made with their friends about how naming something impenetrable made people all the more eager to penetrate it. At the same time, Huron ordered the old citadel, which had housed the ruling elites before the Astral Claws came down and kicked them in the heads, destroyed. After it was destroyed, he designed a whole new palace that was heavily fortified and would be known as the Palace of Thorns. Notice how Huron has a bit of a prickly personality? While this was going on, the Administratum was having a real fit. Because by all accounts, they had every right to the resources of the Badab sector to be distributed wherever they felt was necessary. Except for one tiny problem. The Astartes' ancient right to defend the Imperium by any means necessary superseded the Administratum's position. This standoff between the Maelstrom Warders and the Administratum or Segmentum authorities lasted for over a century. But the Warders did continue to conduct their military operations around the Maelstrom. But there was another consequence for this complete and total shutdown of resources from the Badab sector. The nearby Cathargo sector had been growing rich and decadent by being the ones who got to distribute the output of the Maelstrom to the wider Imperium. Plus, they were the ones who got to guard, and thus tax, the Administratum supply routes through this region of space to the western Segmentum Ultima. But with the resources from the Maelstrom suddenly drying up, the Cathargo sector suddenly found itself suffering severe hunger, or rather wealth, pains. And when you take away rich people's money, they don't exactly stand around and let you redistribute it to people they regard as less than dirt for very long. And with that, we will leave the Badab sector as things quickly begin to spiral out of control. When we return, we will see the Astral Claws strike out of their garrison role and make even more enemies among the Imperial ranks. We will also see the events that take us from a simple matter of who gets the majority of the cookies to a full-scale Imperial Civil War. Thank you for watching this video, all Warhammer fans. Apologies for the delay, but I was battling a very severe sickness for over a month, which I'm pretty sure Nurgle sent me. If you like the series, please help the channel grow. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. And while we're just starting the new series, what would you all like to see after we're done with Badab? Another series like it in Vrax, or perhaps something else in the 40k universe? Please post your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, for more great Warhammer lore and fun videos, check out the links in the description below. This is the Wolf's Corner. Have a good day.